Hi.
Yeah, how are you?
Good.
Okay, my internet connection is kind of very choppy tonight, but I hope it will take us through. That's what I'm praying for. So, is everyone in now?
Sorry, what was that?
Is everyone in now?
We're missing one girl, but I'm not sure if she's going to be able to make it tonight or not.
Okay. Uh, all right. So, okay. So, is everyone set now?
I'm here. I'm ready. And Joseph just put a post on the Google chat that he's listening, but he's on a bus, so
Okay.
he will be home. It looks like shortly, and then he can check in with us.
Okay. All right. So, can someone give us an opening prayer? Then we start a meeting. Corinne.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to volunteer. I was waiting. My 2-year-old was just leaving the room, so I wanted to make sure have her get out before, because it was very loud with her in here. So, I'd be happy to give the prayer now.
Okay.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity that we have to continue our education online, and the ability that we have to meet with a group of people that we might not otherwise have contacts and connections with. And please help us today that we'll be able to discuss the article that we've been given to discuss, and that we'll be able to have thy guidance with us as we continue to learn and to develop and to teach one another. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, so I wanted to share a spiritual thought. So, the thought is going to come from chapter 20, verse 32. Okay. Okay. So, trying to open it so I can read now. Second Nephi chapter 32, verse 8, and it said, now, my beloved brethren, I perceive that ye ponder still in your hearts, and it grieved me that I must speak concerning this thing. For if ye will hearken unto the Spirit, which teacheth men to pray, ye will know that ye must pray. For the evil spirit teacheth not a man to pray, but teacheth him that he must not pray. Love this scripture because it tells us the importance of prayer, and adversary always entices us not to pray. That when we pray, we will be able to discern the things of our Heavenly Father, and we will get a direction for our lives and we may encounter in our lives. Because of a prayer, Heavenly Father will give us a direction and will inspire us how we can be able to solve the problems that we encounter in life. I know this thing to be true in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, so now I want us to go straight. Imagine that for the part one, who to hire. Now, imagine that you are the bankers for the Super Saturday. Which of the two candidates would you hire?
I'll go first. I would hire, for sure. I would hire, was it Natalia? I think because she seemed like she was very qualified for the position. The only reason that they were talking about not hiring was because of her accent being difficult to understand, which I think is a very, I don't know, not politically correct reason to not hire someone. But I think that that really is discrimination when it comes to their hiring process.
Okay.
I agree with you. I like Natalia. The other one that I thought was a really good choice, I forget his name, but it was the one.
Sanchez?
It was the one. It was the last one that had the business, but also had the low GPA.
Yeah, Andy Sanchez.
Yeah, I thought he was a good option just because he seemed like he kind of knew what he was doing, and also it just seemed like he had like the drive for it and everything like that because he had started his own business. But I agree that it's kind of a little bit throw up some warning flags when you see a 2.8 GPA. Because almost in my mind, what I kind of thought of is I was like, well, great, so he does well on tests, so when it matters, but like the day-to-day everything's like the homework. I mean, if he only had a 2.8 in his undergrad, then he didn't do the normal day-to-day operations that he needed to.
Okay. Do you want to say something? Which of the two candidates would you like to hire? If you are a banker at Super Saturday. Okay, since Joseph is not with us, but I also think Natala qualification that needs to secure the job. Looking at her previous experience, she actually had a lot of experience that tells that she actually know what is doing. But also, reading from one in a case, in the previous case that we read up about hiring, past performance cannot predict the future performance. We can point out that sometimes we allow people, give them the benefit of the doubt and bring them on the table. It may appear that she is very good in a past job as a banker, but recruit her now, there can be some issues that might be raised later on because of she might not be a culture fit, even as they indicate. Some said might be a problem. That is one of the reasons some of the recruiters put on a resume. So now, why do you justify the choices that you make?
I said, well,
Can you hear me?
When I was looking at it, what I was just like I said, I was going by her set qualifications when compared with the other candidates. I felt like that she just seemed like she had everything that they were looking for, except for the fact that they didn't like that she had the accent. So that's why I went with her.
Okay. Okay.
So the two that I would have chosen, Natalia and then Andy. And the reason why I chose them to say like over the other two, for Martin Street, he was the one that didn't have any business experience, but he did have like a lot of leadership experience. And I just think that it's important to have some sort of business experience. And he's a second-year MBA student, and he doesn't have any business experience. It just seems like, a little odd to me. And as well as they said that he was going to a lot of other recruitment seminars, and it seemed like he had a lot of people vying for him. And at the very end of one professional said that if a person doesn't sign and accept the offer right away, then we've made a mistake. And I just don't think that he would be doing that. And then Ken was the other guy. He seemed like he was a really great candidate, but it's just so hard to hire somebody that has such young kids and then expect them to work 24/7. But I mean, the other thing is like, if this is his career he wants, that's going to be the reality wherever he goes. So I think he would be a fine choice. It's difficult because you have to be aware of that, and it's also difficult because the thing is at the end of the day, like your family is what's most important and what matters the most, regardless of your job or anything. And it's just hard to say. But by the other two candidates, I just felt like they were able to meet the standards, and they didn't have a lot of, real negatives that would hold them back.
Okay. So, looking at a current issue, when we think back with our previous last week discussion, we can see there is some sort of discrimination, because if you are not going to hire the person because based on the person is having a family, is having 2 kids, and that is something that they think upon other qualification, they think they might not hire because of a kid is some sort of discrimination. That's what I was thinking. Anyway.
I agree with you, Joseph. I was thinking the same thing, because I remember being in that situation when my husband was finishing his, he finished school and he got his first job, and he was working for one of the big 5 firms. And then he started looking for a job in a smaller company. And at that point, he was looking to leave the big 5 because he had children, but that didn't mean that he wasn't willing to put in the time needed to advance his career. And when my children were small, my husband was gone a lot, and he did work hard. And, he, now he has a little bit more flexibility because he's put in the time and he's worked his way up. But sometimes family is important, but sometimes you also have to consider your career also. So if someone's going for a position like that, then they know what it is that they're getting into. I don't think anyone looking to go into investment banking knows that it's a grind, and it's not something that you can do 8 to 5 and take lightly. So by them saying that they weren't going to hire him because he had a small family, I don't know if that was necessarily a fair decision.
Okay, that is very nice. Jessica, do you have something to say again?
Not really. I mean, I agree with you. This is like a really hard case for me to read because right now, like I'm in a similar situation. My degree's in finance. I don't want to go into investment banking necessarily, but I mean, I'm in Chicago and I'm trying to find an internship, and I've applied for like 20 of them, and not one person has shown any interest in me. And and we have one daughter, and she's 14 months old, and so it's just a really hard situation. And it was really eye-opening to kind of see like what their process of hiring was and what their consideration was, and all those things like that. And it's just hard. I mean, it's just a hard decision all around because I mean there's just so many factors that go into it. And you just have, and like they talked about how they wanted to hire a specific amount of to come onto the internships because they were hiring from the third year and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, every year that changes. And so it's just a difficult process, I think.
Okay. Um, so, what other information would be useful in the decision? Looking at the bankers, Super Saturday, will be in making their decision. Do you hear my question?
So, like, what other information would be useful to make a decision? Is that what you're asking? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it would be useful to know. I just don't know. Well, like one thing is I think it would be useful to know that the second guy, what was his name? Is like Martin, I think. Martin, they said that because of his school, they couldn't look at his grades. And so I think that's kind of a difficult thing because they're comparing everybody based on like their grades and their GPA and stuff. But when you can't have somebody's basis to go on, then I mean it's an unfair advantage or disadvantage or whatever. I think what would also be helpful is to know like they said, like an important thing is like the culture. So to know if like some of these people have lived in a big city or like that type of stuff, or worked in a big companies. I guess it did say that, but I can't think of anything else.
I think that I noticed that there weren't references. Like they didn't talk to anyone that had actually interacted with these people. So they're going off of their short conversations that they have with them, but they haven't actually spoken to someone who has dealt with them on a day-to-day or over a long period of time, and what they really are like, and what their work ethic is like, and what they're like when they get in a stressful situation or when they have a lot on their plate. So I think that the references is a key to really looking into someone and knowing more about who they really are.
Yeah, I agree with you because they actually haven't do their background checks to find out other information about them. They are just looking at their resume, and that is what and decision that they have had with them is their decision on. And I think if they really wanted to hire a candidate, they wanted to find the right candidate, they need to go that far talking to somebody who has actually worked with them. So the references will be the very key important people that they can contact for other information.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't want to take away from this point, but just something interesting to consider. I was talking to my husband about this, and my husband, he's going to graduate school to be an IO psychologist, which is an industrial organizational psychologist. And so he goes in and he deals with employee satisfaction and hiring and firing and those kind of things. And so one thing that he said is that there's been studies done on people like over utilizing the reference, because a lot of times employers, if they say something bad, then they can face defamation lawsuits, as well as there's problems like if you use a reference from a job that you had 5 years ago, it's 5 years ago, and their perception and their memory, you know, just kind of changes, and you lose a little bit of that. And so it's just interesting. Like, I still think it's an important aspect, but it's just interesting to know that you can't over rely on that, because a lot of times they just will say something good about the person because they don't want to be sued.
Okay. So what else would you want to know about a type of a person who can succeed at SG Cohen?
Can you say that one more time?
What else would you want to know about the type of person who can succeed at SG Cohen?
Oh, what else would we want to know about the person to know if they would be successful?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like they had different information for all of the people. I feel like, I don't know, I didn't feel like there was a cohesive. It almost seems like when they narrowed it down to those 4 candidates, that they almost needed to maybe meet with them again, or have a different, I don't know. I just felt like they had 4 different candidates with kind of 4 different backgrounds and with really different information about the different, you know, one they had their GPA, another one they didn't have the GPA, and they've known about, you know, someone, I don't know. So I feel like they needed maybe a different group of questions to maybe ask these candidates to really dig deeper into who they are and what kind of employee they would be.
I really like that.
Okay.
I think maybe also something like going along with that would be to have like a set of the same 5 questions that you ask every single candidate, and that way you can compare them.
Yeah, I mean, I have never,
Okay.
I haven't had a lot of jobs in my life because I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last 15 years. But like my husband, I don't think he's ever been hired for a job in which he only had 1 interview. I mean, you know, you go after they kind of have narrowed it down, you usually go back and they dig deeper to find out more. They don't just hire from like a first conversation. So I just thought it was an interesting process that they used.
Okay, group
Okay.
members, I'm also around now, and I've been following the whole discussion. And just to chip into what Karen said right now, I don't know, Bartholomew, if you know of the procedures that the area offices use. You know, when I was hired as a support specialist for Seminary Institute, basically the interview is just done one discussion, as in they fix a day for interview, you go, you are being asked, okay, why you are applying for the job. They've already actually, and a few questions, and then they go like, what's in that ask you that they've not asked you, and then finish. That's you go. They say you hear from them, and so if you are qualified, they just call you and then send you an email that come and do the necessary things. But then I see that to hire the SNI coordinator takes a system. They go through the something like a school for the first 6 weeks. After that, they do practicals where they teach, and then the area directors and assistant area directors comes and then supervise them. After that, they do HR interview. After that, they do the area presidency interview, and then after that, they do the apostle. One of the apostles will call via Skype. One of the church board of educators will call via Skype, and then they do. So just like what Karen said, probably maybe the husband has not just gotten a job via one interview. I don't know. This is what I was thinking about. Does that actually depend on the kind of position the person is applying for, or you feel that you should go for every other position that one is applying? That the interviews the interview process shouldn't just be one time, just should be probably maybe it should be a process rather instead of just like an event.
Okay, so looking at this case that we are reading, it seems that these are not the entry level jobs. it's a jobs that are require people to have some sort of experience before they can be recruited in that matter. If an entry-level job might be, the process might be so lenient in some way for people to just enter, but this a top position, let's say a mid-level position. So it's actually important for the hiring managers to do all the necessary things in order to get the best candidate to fill out the position. Because the little mistake that they will make in the hiring process is going to be a big blow to the bank. Because if the person comes in and he couldn't satisfaction, it is something that is going to affect the bank. And since the bank wanted to, focus on this in becoming an emerging investment bank that is focusing on healthcare and technology, I think that is why the process has to be a little bit rigorous enough for them to be able to get the best candidate.
Okay, just to also a quick insert to what Jessica said. I think, I don't know why, but it looks like truly people are actually underusing. Sorry, it was Karen who said that. It was people are actually, or the managers are actually underusing the reference part of the series, where probably they can find out a little bit more from those individuals. But then Jessica said something that actually struck me now, that are they underusing it based on probably they don't want to call anybody, or people don't want to be called nowadays, and then be asked, okay, how do you know Joseph? And then they give their recommendation, and then they hire Joseph, and something happened, and then probably they might go sue them because they give recommendation that, oh, okay, he's a good guy and is this kind of like a question to the team.
Okay, Corinne, do you have some sort of insight to that question?
I can see both sides of that, and I think it depends on, but I don't think that anyone is ever going to put a reference for someone who's going to say, oh, he was horrible. But I think that you also would put someone that my husband has never put as a reference someone that he maybe didn't get along with as well as another person in the company. But I know that he's been a reference for people before, and there's a line of being honest without saying bad things, if that makes sense. Like, you can honestly answer questions about someone without making them out to be like a horrible person. But you know what I mean? Like, if a company's asking good questions, they can can read between the lines of the answers, I would say, if that makes sense. Like, you can tell whether someone enjoyed working with a person by the way they answer, not necessarily just the words that they say.
Okay.
That's cool.
Jessica, do you have something to say?
No, I totally agree with you, Corey. I think that's true. You're not going to put somebody that didn't like you or that you didn't get along with. But yeah, I guess the problem with the interview process is, like, absolutely 100%, they're always biased. Like, as much as you try to be unbiased, and you can put the resume, their resume through the exact same screening process on every single one, that's fine. But when you go to interview, like it said in the case, one guy said that he really liked the people who had started a business because he thought that showed initiative or whatever. And and there's always bias. And so it's just really hard because there's never, it's really hard to just go into a place like that and then just have everybody agree on the same one, as you kind of see, and have everyone and you know what I mean, and everybody come off the same way to you. And so I think it's important to like being an interviewee or an interviewer to kind of like realize like there is some bias, and to try and to attempt to get rid of that, and then just to put your best foot forward. And if they don't hire you for the job, then they don't hire you for the job.
Okay.
I absolutely agree, because there's definitely the aspect of a personality fit. I mean, I know my husband's come away from interviews before where he was like, yeah, that's just not going to work for me. Even as the person being interviewed, like he's like, I can't work with that person. So I mean, their personalities do have some, and because you have to work with people day after day, and if you can't get along with someone, then it doesn't matter what their resume looks like, they're not going to be the person for you. So when you have, I think that's kind of like why they have so many different people looking at their candidates, because they can get a better view of how different people view them, not just one person's personality conflict.
Okay. So why is there so much disagreement between the senior bankers in the Saturday meeting about which recruit to hire? Is it partly because of the interview process or partly because of the types of interviews?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think influenced this is that they got recruitments from colleges, and people who had, were alumni from those colleges went there. And I mean, you always are trying to look out for your own and keep it. And then you also understand like the curriculum and what you had to go through to get your own degree. And so you're like, yeah, they would be good because they had to take this class and so did I. And and they had this professor and so did I, or whatever. And so I think that definitely contributed to some of the, some of the disagreement.
Okay. Joseph, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Sorry, my mic. I mute my mic. Sometimes I just don't want to noise.
Okay.
The question again, come again.
So why is there so much disagreement between the senior bankers in a Saturday meeting about which recruit to hire?
For me, recently, just few months ago, I was working with this organization that's basically kind of like my company, and so we had this Philippines man who was also a board member, and then sometimes we sit down in the hiring or the interviewing process. Now, this is what I see that there's a disagreement. When the people who are going to interview candidates do not plan and discuss, that these are the qualifications that we are going to look at, these are the person's personalities, these are the traits that when the person enters or this and that, we are going to use in ensuring that we are going to use it as a marking scheme, for that particular candidate.
Okay.
Managers does not discuss these things beforehand and even afterhand. You see that there's always disagreement because one said no, but everybody is trying to say probably what they feel or individually. Just as Karen said, that sometimes the husband will come and say, no, I can't work with this individual. You understand? So they know there's a certain standard. The person didn't get to that particular standard. Yes, there's certain qualification, but then you also not probably hire somebody who might always want to come and quarrel with you in the office or something like that, or be insubordinate. And so basically, when managers sit down and then have a pre-discussion before interviews and post-discussions after the interviews, for me, I think it will not bring any disagreements.
Okay. Corin?
I think I agree with Joseph on that, is that they maybe they needed to be better on understanding of what it is exactly that they were looking for before they met with the candidates.
Okay. So I also think like that because it seems both of them are on a different page. Candidate, if they should have actually have set up a metrics on how best they are going to evaluate that candidate, I think the disagreement would have been, and they would have reached a consensus of to know which candidates they actually need to hire. Okay, might there be any better ways to learn about the candidates than traditional interviews? What else might they try? So now I'll start with Joseph. Better ways to learn about it than traditional interviews. You try.
I don't know, but recently, just as I said, my boss, whom I was working beforehand with the Seminary Institute department, just went through, just came apply for the job when the advert was out, and then he was interviewed by the HR, and then I think he was interviewed by the area authority, and then he was interviewed by uh, one of the church board of educators. But now, to get employed in Seminary Institute as a coordinator or even as a teacher or anything, what they basically do now is that they first of all organize what they call a pre-service training. So pre-service training takes about 6 weeks, about 8 weeks. Now after the pre-service training, they go through a series of like writing reports, teaching classes, and things like that. For me, this is what I think. I think now the church is trying to go away from um, the normal traditional interviews where they get to know the people. But this time around, because of the kind of the workload that they're about to give to this kind of people, they want to have a kind of a long-term, a little bit long-term relationship with them and know how they respond to assignments, how they respond to pressure, how they respond to activities and even instructions and things like that. Because within these 6 weeks and 8 weeks, there are series of activities that they are being done. And you see that some of them begin to drop on the way. Some of them are graded and you see that they are out of the game. In fact, you see that at the end of the day, about 20 people will start the pre-service, but about 4 people will end up going for the HR interviews, and then about 2 people will go for the um, area presidency interview and so forth. And so for me, I think yes, sometimes depending, as you said, these are high manager level, and so they can organize if maybe a day training for all candidates or something that or in form of a training that they can have one-to-one meetings with them, like casual meetings even before interviews. At least will also help them know the candidate better. Then understand also the company.
So Joseph, it sounds like you're saying almost like a internship type situation.
Exactly.
Yes.
I also was thinking then in the article that we read before this case study, it talked about I think that's where it was. We talked about asking more like a more I'm sorry, let me get my thoughts together.
Yeah,
a question about what they've done in the past or how they've handled a situation in the past. And I thought that was a really interesting interview tactic to say, how did you do this? Not how would you, but how did you handle the situation? And I think that is real telling to a person's personality and might get you more insight into how they would handle something in the future.
Okay. Jessica?
I don't have really anything to add, but I think both of those ideas are great ideas. It's just hard to figure out a way to know how they'll work and how to fit in before you actually hire them. But I think, there's steps that you can take to try and attempt to get the best possible employee that you can. And so I think it was great that they got everybody together and that they interviewed with so many different people so that they were able to have, you know what I mean? Because even if each person asks a different answer or asks the same question, then they'll give a different answer a lot of times. And sometimes they'll say something and then you'll start a conversation. And so I think that was great. And, having an internship is a great thing as well. I guess the problem is that you just invest so much time and so much money into getting good hires that, they said that going out to campuses and helping people and getting good hires wasn't part of their pay for the managers or whoever went, but it did contribute to performance reviews, which ended in bonuses, as well as flying everybody out there and putting on this meeting and everything like that. So I just think it's important to have like good steps in place, and that way you can just try and get the best possible when you can.
Okay. So I think one thing that they can also do maybe is try to help the candidate demonstrate the same ability to do certain jobs, and maybe the same criteria. They will be able to know which is a cultural fit and which candidate is actually skills fit, which candidate is actually having the leadership potential that they are looking for. Based on that, they can be able to use it to hire that person. So a lot of things can be done remotely to be able to get the candidate, like the behavioral questions. If some of these things were being thrown in with will be able to get enough information about them, and based on that, they can be able to make the assessment to hire them. What are the criteria for choosing candidates as with Corinne?
I'm not sure if my computer was cutting out or if yours was, but I missed that question.
So I'm asking, what are the criteria for choosing candidates at SG Cohen?
What other criteria could they use? Is that?
Yes, the criteria they use.
Sorry. I don't know. That I'm not sure on. Let me think about it for a second.
So are you asking what other criteria they could use, or the criteria they're using right now?
The criteria that they are using right now.
Okay.
I think when we go to the last page of the this thing of the article,
Page 7.
they have an evaluation form. I think that is based on what they are going to use to hire the candidate.
Yeah.
Look through that. Or let me share my screen.
Yeah, page 7, the hiring criteria.
Yeah, and when we go to page 17 to page 15, they have an evaluation form based on the various things that they are looking at.
Basically, that's what is the details of that form at the bottom is what they've said at the hiring criteria, that we tried, to formalize the criteria by using grade sheets for the bankers to fill out, and then having them vote and then make a case on behalf of their candidates. And so basically the criteria that they are trying to use was that each of them will fill out that grade sheet, and then they will vote, they'll make a vote, and then also make a case behalf on their candidate. So why are you choosing that candidate, or maybe over that person or over that guy? And so basically I think that was one of the criteria that they use. That's what I know of.
Okay.
Were they asking uniform questions? I don't know if that was ever clarified. Like, were the each of the hiring, the people who were doing the interviewing, did they ask the same questions, or could they ask anything they wanted?
I think they could ask anything what they wanted. It didn't clarify in the case though.
Yes, because just on the grid sheet, what it just said was judgment and maturity, interpersonal skills.
They didn't clarify exactly the case. Yes.
Oh, Bartholomew, are you there?
Go on. So can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, yes. I can see it.
So so this is the evaluation form on how they are going to evaluate a candidate. So I think they are looking at various aspects of this thing. So they are looking at judgment and maturity, the interpersonal skills, leadership, whether that person has some carrier some initial, has some vision, the technical skills. They are looking at creativity, modeling, accounting, financing, and prioritizing. And they are looking at their work ethic, whether that person is a team player, flexibility and versatility, motivation also comes in. So based on these criteria, what they are going to assign to each individual candidate based on this criteria, that is what they are going to use to do the hiring.
Yes,
do you agree with that?
Yes, but Bartholomew, what you also, a fair idea of how they were going to do it is what they said on that page 7. Because even with this, they didn't actually ask specific questions that probably maybe each interviewer might use alone. Just a block bullet form of what they should look out for. Okay, and so as I said at the beginning, that they are just going to use that sheet and then make cases on behalf of those candidates. Unlike maybe probably asking some questions that will enable them to be able to make this case. I don't really know how to go about it.
Corinne, do you have something to say?
No, I mean, I think that if each interviewer was looking at the same, like, even if they all were asking questions differently, I guess if each interview was asking similar questions to each of the candidates, their criteria would be consistent, if that makes sense. So, how they rank each person would be consistent, even if how they're ranking them isn't consistent with the next person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So how do senior bankers know that what they are supposed to be looking for in a candidate?
Via the grade sheet. It's through the grade sheet.
Okay. So now they made a statement over here, which I wanted to design. The criteria aren't very clear. They mention things like faith and sparkle. Try to get them to define faith or sparkle. Are these really good criteria to use, or do they just encourage those hiring to feel good? Have measured their bias toward the people like themselves?
That's basically what I said. That the form they give them wasn't actually something that probably is going to help them become biased. Because, for example, yes, sometimes you can judge from people's perspective when you have a chat with them to know about the way the judge thinks and then the way they go about with issues. But then that few minutes with them, most of the things on that form, you might not be able to see it, or you might not be able to, say that, okay, this individual, sorry, that you might not be able to say, okay, this individual is actually a very good team player. Yes, he might actually answer a question that might sound as, okay, he's a very good team player, but it's not really something that is realistic.
No. Okay. All right. So now I just want us to move on to deciding which business schools to recruit was controversial. Was the choice of which school to recruit at so important to SG Cohen? Starting with Jessica.
Well, they talked about how they're not like a huge big company that everybody's wanting in the finance industry, like JP Morgan or other things like that. So they talked about how they were you know, they were trying to recruit from the top 10 schools like Harvard and things like that, and it just wasn't, you know what I mean? They were just getting mid-range, you know, people, and those people weren't always committed to the job, and they weren't committed to the company. But if you went to like the lower 10 or 15 ones after that, and then you took the top recruiters from there, then you have a lot, you know what I mean? You have a lot more people vying for wanting the job, for wanting to be in a company that's established. So I think that that's kind of why they chose the schools, and I think that's a great, you know, idea. Just because you didn't go to Harvard doesn't mean that you won't work as hard or know as much, you know.
Okay. Corinne?
Yeah, I agree with Jessica. I think that it was actually a smart move on their part, because I don't think because when you go to those top schools, you're taking second best, right? Whereas if you go to the smaller schools where those big companies don't even bother to go, you're getting the top of the top of the top of their class. You're getting the people that have put the most time and the most effort in, and not just the people who maybe have gotten by. So I think that it's actually a really smart move to go and try to find the top of their class at a school that maybe isn't as big of a school or as well known a school.
Okay. Okay, that is a very nice idea. Okay, so because our time is going past, so I'll have to cut it short. Let's move to the next question. So is real core strategy good one or not? Starting with Joseph.
In terms of the strategy that they use, I've actually been thinking about it. That if maybe I was in the company, and then is that strategy good or not? 10, I think it's 4.
Okay.
So not good.
Okay, so Corinne, Jessica.
Overall, I think that they're hiring. I mean, I think that they're doing the best they can, and I think their strategy, for the most part, like where they're going to find the recruits from, is working for them. And I think that, I mean, when this whole case is about the middle 4, but they were able to, they were hiring 15 people, so they were able to find 11 really solid candidates that they all for sure really wanted, and then they were able to knock out some that they knew they didn't want. So I think that their strategy and their process is working for them.
Okay. I also think that because if they are good from the top tier schools, and the schools are actually not, they are not getting any yield from there, going to the lower end to be able to get the same candidates that will be culturally fit to the school, it is actually important. So the strategies is actually working for them. So would it make sense for the company to recruit programs like law or technology? Why or why not?
Yeah, I don't think, just personally, I mean, my degree's in finance, so I might be biased towards this, but I don't think it's a great idea to go looking for an investment banker in other aspects like technology or like a law degree. I mean, I know that they said that the CEO was a law degree and he moved towards the finance, and that's fine if he could get his foot in the door and maybe get like an entry level and then he works up his way. But finance and investments are pretty complicated, and if you don't know all the aspects to them, and you're trying to invest for a personal or an individual, you can lose their life savings. So I don't think it's a good idea.
I also think that if someone wants to be working in investment banking, they've gone and got their degree for the most part in business, and we're talking about MBA candidates. So these are people that have gotten their degree already, and they've moved on to get their master's degree, which means that they're pretty invested in being in finance. And if someone's working on getting their master's degree in law, I don't think investment banking is necessarily usually the route that they're looking to take.
Okay. So Joseph, do you have something to say about that?
No, let's move.
Okay, so actually for me, I think going to any other graduate programs like law or technology to hire somebody to investment banking, not a bad idea, because in investment banking, they actually need people who are going to work on technology side. If somebody is having a technology background, which is supposed to work on the IT side, and there to hire that person, so they can actually go in there and help those people. Now, should the SG Cohen change from the core school strategy now, that is an employer's market again, they could probably go back to the top 10 schools and get now. Should they change their strategy?
I don't think so, because I think the top applicants from like Harvard and the people who've gone to those really prestigious schools, I think they're still looking for the position at the really prestigious banks. I mean, obviously, I feel like people who choose to go to those kind of schools, that is important to them, the title and the name of, like, you know, if the name on their diploma from, you know, the school that they're graduating from is of enough importance that you're going to spend more money possibly, you know, and to get that degree, then you probably want the prestige of the company you're working for to be one of those big companies.
Okay. All right. So what are the pros and cons of SG Cohen's approach to recruiting on campus? Use and disadvantages recruiting on campus.
Well, the pros is that they get, like, you know, top pick of the schools, like we said, and they also, when they go in and recruit to the colleges, and then they, you know, then they have a lot of different people applying for them, instead of when you apply on a site, if somebody doesn't look there, then you're not, you know, you're not able to get them. The cons possibly are that, you know, there's people even with MBAs, like it said, that doesn't have a background in business, and that, you know, hasn't worked and things like that because they're just a student.
Okay, that is nice. So are the associates also the best people to send to campus for recruiting? What about saving money and getting uniform by sending recruiters?
I think they're sending the right people. I think that's kind of standard across most industries, but that's who you send in, and you send the associates in to do the recruiting, because they're the ones that are closest in experience to those students, and they've been there most recently, and they're the ones that are doing or have just recently done the job that is being recruited for. So they really can answer the questions that the candidates might have about, like, what the job really entails and what the work environment is really like at that company. Whereas I think once you move up to the higher level people, they probably don't have as much of a handle on what the day-to-day grind is as a lower, you know, employee in the company.
Okay, that is a nice idea. All right, so let's move on. So, you know, the senior bankers on campus, for me, I personally think it is not a good idea, because even though they might have a lot of experience about the industry, which they can share with the candidates, they might also seem intimidating for this candidate to be able to actually ask them the real questions that they actually wanted them to answer. The senior bankers is something that I am against. I don't know whether you guys also agree with me. Okay. So let's move on to the Super Saturday. What are the objectives of the Super Saturday?
What was that?
What are the objectives of the Super Saturday?
So the the objective of the Super Saturday was just to find people to hire and to bring everybody together so that the hiring process can be consensual.
Yeah, basically the objective was to get somebody to fit in for a vacant position.
Okay. So do the objectives complete with one another? With a hiring on campus and that of the Super Saturday, does it complete each other?
I think it works well together because you get the people that are interested and they have some idea of what your company is about, but then they actually come and there's more of a conversation that takes place about what really is going to entail. But I feel like the on-campus part of it is almost the recruits are interviewing the company and finding out if it's a company they might be interested in working for. And then when they come for the Super Saturday, it's like then they're being interviewed for the position, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I also think that it works properly together.
Okay. So one thing I also want to know that even as they go to the school, SG Cohen was able to a lot of information about the candidates who are actually interested in doing an investment banking, and from there they can be able to. So now let's move on to do you think that there will be a better ways to structure the on-campus interview and recruiting?
I don't think there is. It didn't seem like they did a lot of. They gave us a lot of information about how it was structured, except for the fact that they went and did they were there to answer questions, and I think that's kind of typical.
Okay, because I agree with you because we don't have enough information about how the structure actually went.
Yeah, I also think that with the Super Saturday approach, they kind of tried to get everything in at once. And like we were talking about, it's better to have several interviews with different people over a period of time.
Okay. So is there any disadvantage about a Super Saturday approach too? Advantage or a disadvantage about?
I think Jessica kind of just answered that one.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. I think our time is almost up now. So what is the difference between recruiting and hiring? Corinne? What is the difference between recruiting and hiring?
I think that's what we were talking about before, that when they're on campus and they're actually talking to the people, then at that point is when they're doing the recruiting. And when they come in for the Saturday, then that's when the hiring actually takes place.
Okay. Did you learn from this case about recruiting?
I think that we learned that it was the recruiting process is I guess is different than the hiring process because before now I almost thought they were one and the same. But like we said, the recruiting process is like you go and you find people who are interested in your company, whereas the hiring process it's kind of switched.
Okay, yeah, that is true. So for me, one thing I've learned about the recruiting is that with the on-campus one, you actually get to get a lot of generate a lot of interest from candidates interested about coming to work with our company. Now, what do we learn about hiring too? Do we learn something about hiring?
I think we learned that there's a lot of
Joseph.
things that come into play. Then it's not as easy as it might seem to be sometimes.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask, so as member to rate the overall quality of today's discussion from 0 to 10, what is your rate, Sister Corinne, followed by Jessica, and followed by Joseph?
I think I gave you a 10. You did a good job of keeping it organized and running, and I liked the that you started the discussion today out with a spiritual thought to get us headed in the right direction.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Jessica?
I think it was a 10 too. I think that you did a good job of covering all the aspects of the case and all the questions that we needed to answer.
And I think you did a very good job by implementing the suggestion that was given by Corinne to sometimes share our screen so that it can help the other members. I think it's either Corinne or Jessica, but I think you implemented that and that was awesome performance. Good job.
Okay. All right. So what can we do better next time? As a team, what could we do better next time?
To read more, come to the class with a little bit of questions from our side, and to make the conversation lively. But I think we did more than good the previous times that we actually all of us have actually read through and then made the conversation very lively.
Okay. All right. So thank you all for coming for the discussion. I hope to see you next week. By the way, we are supposed to start working on the second part of our Do Hikis project, right?
Yeah, do you guys want me to do the same thing that I did last time and kind of set up the blank Google Doc to start entering into? Did that work well?
It would be awesome.
Yes, I think that, it works very well. So it will be great for you if you can start that so that we can.
Okay, I'll actually make a copy of the one we just did, and I'll just delete the text out of it so we have it exactly formatted the same way with the cover page and everything. And then we can start inputting stuff. And I would say the sooner we get started on it, the better, the less we'll have to do at the last minute this time. So maybe if we kind of start working on it at the end of this week, starting into next week with the new information that we're learning.
Exactly.
Okay. So today, one person is missing out. Marilla is not in. Did anybody have any information from her?
She hasn't checked in at all. I don't know. She was talking last week about maybe dropping the class. I don't know if she's still in or not. I'll include her on that Google Doc and we'll see if she gets back to us. But should we just circle back around? Jessica, do you want to start to be the group leader next week? And then if we hear from her, she can add in the following week.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So thank you all for coming. See you next week.
All right. Bye.
Wow.